Hello everyone and welcome to the Soul Life Show, and today our guest is Barry Littleton, who lives in America. He's an ET experiencer and he's also writing a book. So thank you for joining us today. Barry, you're also one of my best friends too.
Hello, Soul. How you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on too. I've been excited. Couldn't wait to have you on.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So you've been getting like a lot of messages and a lot of emails and things. You get a lot of people ask you about seek you to kind of bring answers to them in their experiences. And I hear you've been like inundated a bit lately because you've been on quite a few shows.
Yeah, a lot of people have kind of come forward,
Yeah.
I will say, one, the fact that anyone ever asked me to be back on any of these shows has really kind of blown me away. But also the amount of communication. I asked for some things, like I was wanting, especially things like other Black experiencers to come forward, and just experiencers in general, I wanted to talk to more.
Yeah.
That very much happened. Sometimes I get so many experiences relayed that I don't always reply immediately because it blows me away.
Yeah.
But as far as making this tapestry that we are, that is the experiences, it's been incredible. You know what I mean? So many things that I thought about contact have been blown out of the water. You know what I mean? And it's through the communication that's going on right now. The amount of people that are looking for answers and sometimes just want somebody to talk to that has been through similar. I know people like you and I didn't have that in our age group.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to have, friends and connect in that way because, having grown up for so long, not having any of that and, not being able to kind of share it or talk about it, it was like this whole separate, different world. And the other thing that was interesting too, because I started chatting to you, I think probably around the same time that I started talking with Pete too. So you guys have kind of been there for me, from the start of this journey, kind of stepping outside of that silence and, starting to speak about it a bit more. I had spoken about it in Australia too, on TV and different things, but I hadn't had other people as much to be able to really relate at such a deep level. But yeah, also, you're one of the few people that I've actually seen on board the craft and had interactions with on a non-physical side of things, which is just, that's blown me away because I've never actually met you in person.
Yeah, I as well. Between that and the fact that we've encountered some of the same type of frequency of beings.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have some past life association also. And you're the first person that could come forward vividly and tell me things without them being suggested whatsoever. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that never happened to me before. You're also the first person to come forward and tell me you'd seen me on a ship.
Yeah.
And actually, the other was my sibling told me that. But you're the second person in my entire life to tell me that. And since then, that seemed to be setting in a chain of events. Now I've been told that by a few more people. You know what I mean? And more it's going on. And it's unreal, actually.
Yeah.
The scope of our consciousness and the scope of our awareness it's really a trip.
It is. And I guess people are probably wondering like what that looked like on board the craft too. So I'm just going to describe a little bit of it. So what I remember from the experience was it was like a giant mothership. There was many layers and decks to the craft. On the inside, the metal flooring, when I looked down, was sort of like like a steel type material with circles punched in it. So sort of like what you'll see, if you go to an aquarium, it's kind of that similar feel. There's a soft blue glowing emanating light there. And I saw us just like in these blue suits. There was a few other people there. But the weirdest thing that I didn't expect was this mist that we were breathing in. And when I talked to you about it the day after it happened, and you were saying, did you have temporal inertia? I think you called it. And I'm like, what's that? And you're like, oh, it's where you wake up, feeling groggy or you get a headache. And I'm like, yeah, I do. So you kind of helped me put the pieces together with that experience also. But it was just, it was so different seeing us on board a craft because you don't have those kind of like lower doubts and fears and worries or kind of the same things that will bother you on a human level. Like you don't have that, you have more confidence in your job and your ability to carry things out. And we have more confidence in who we are, which is interesting looking at it from that side of things.
You know, yeah, that was another thing, you know, and I hadn't heard anyone else mention that. And I think you had told me that maybe before I actually ever said it to Peter. I give Peter a shout out, by the way. He's a major reason that I'm talking now.
Yeah.
The mist itself is very, you know, to me it smelled a lot more like Windex.
Yeah.
And I looked that up, ammonia type of a smell.
Yeah.
I found out I think that's too much nitrogen in the air. I think, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, but that's you know, like before they sent me back on one of these experiences, I'm in a room that's so little, and there's something like a backpack on me, pumping back. It looks like a needle, but it doesn't hurt. Okay. And I realize then when I see them in one of the few windows I see on one of those ships, I can see them looking into this chamber. I keep thinking, why am I in here? I'm too big to be in here.
Yeah.
Like a friend of mine starts telling me he's got his, he's a deep sea diver, and he tells me he had a friend that he can't dive with anymore because they got the bends. And he said every time they have to be put in the hyperbaric chamber because of the bends. I started thinking, whoa, hyperbaric chamber and the bends, that's the nitrogen bubbles. It's something like that in blood, right? And so it's a similar, they were putting me in some type of a chamber.
You're giving me galactic goosebumps.
Yeah, we don't. Then they sent me back right after that. In that room in particular, after they got through pumping me with oxygen, there appeared to be what looked like dozens of these, I don't know if you have them there, these things the kids play with called super balls. And when you bounce them, or when you actually look at them, they've got these weird, they almost look like Jupiter on there, like little things like that. There were dozens of those around.
Okay.
And it floated me back. Excuse me. Took me back to my car. But, you know, all these are things that are hard to remember when you have that temporal aphasia you just talked about. Because there's a dimensional distortment, vibrational distortment between you and the ship and the beings on board. That makes it hard to even remember the retention of the bit itself, hard to remember.
And
I had a hard time.
You sort of feel a bit hungover the next day. Mm-hmm, like that's, you know, and hard to sort of like get back into body. I find I walk into things a little bit, you know, after one of those experiences and find it kind of hard to wake up or hard to come back into body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of lightheaded feeling. Yeah, you know, I had, you know, most of my experiences, they're kind of physical. So the next day it was, I'd say draining, but you have that certain type of a kundalini type of exhilaration. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, it's hard to explain, but physically, I see now why they took me more, or when I went physically more at request when I was a little younger in my early 20s and late teens. That's because the older you get, I think physically, I could endure it now, but I'd rather not. You know, it's a lot like, I couldn't understand as a child why I really detested merry-go-rounds so much. But merry-go-rounds, when you get on those things, it feels a lot like being on one of those ships. Yeah. The same type of dizzy feeling, the same type of stomach nausea. You know,
Yeah, I actually, back in my kindergarten years, I vomited on the child sitting opposite me on one of those spinning things. Oh, you were also one of the first person that mentioned the blue wisp. So I'll just hold up part of a picture, which look like these guys, sort of like a blue orb type thing. When I've experienced them, I felt them come in like around my body. Sometimes they'll actually vibrate me out into another dimension or vibrate part of my non-physical body onto a craft. And I've seen them interacting with the mantis beings too and a few other different types. But you were one of the first people that like we connected, and it's like, yes, I've experienced them. Did you want to maybe talk about your experience with the blue wisp a little bit?
Sure. Okay. For me, I'll tell you what when it kind of started. All right. I'd seen them before, but it's very easily to dismiss them with what we call cognitive dissonance. Yeah. I thought that fireflies, especially if it's that time of year, the fireflies out, you know? Yeah. I like practicing different techniques, spiritual techniques, and I was more into the ones that would give immediate spiritual results. You know what I mean? So I was practicing a couple of the techniques that were recommended by Carlos Castaneda. And this one in particular was called the Gate of Power. All right. And the Gate of Power details running a very bizarre way in very dark night on terrain, all right? But in reality, what it was doing was stopping my internal dialogue. That's what this exercise really does.
Yeah.
And the gate power, it looks weird, but for me, I kind of correlated to the Indians that were known as the Great Walkers.
Yeah.
That walked across like the Bering Strait. No one knows how they did it.
Yeah.
I think that's the same type of warrior we're talking about. The same type of technique that shifts you kind of into the dream body, your cognitive perception, and you kind of go that way. Anyway, I was doing this. Sorry, I was getting off track. I was doing the power, and that's when at first I realized I'm way across this field, named one, which was nearly impossible. But at the same time, I start seeing these wisps. And this is the time of year, it was about mid-January. So there were no fireflies when it's like, 15, 20, 25 degrees out there. Should have been out there doing it, but I was wrapped up. Anyway, I see these wisps, all right?
Yeah.
And they're very fleeting. They're blue normally, and they look like fireflies almost, but they go out very quickly. To the point where I'm trying to see them outside of my peripheral, and I can't. I keep thinking to them, don't go out so quick. Let me see what you are. Because for all I know, they could have been fairies. They definitely weren't fireflies, but I wasn't sure. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's the wisp. And I wasn't paying attention that sometimes these ships, I'd see ships after that, like during that time.
Yeah.
And to be honest, sometimes I see the ships, I would run. Forget the gate of power. I did a straight run back to my vehicle and got the heck out of there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it didn't dawn on me. I thought that maybe these were nature spirits or fairies of some type. Now, later on, when I have these missing episodes of contact, I find that there are these... on the first ship that I missed time, that I'll call it adult onset experiences, there was these eggs. I've described them to Peter before, these large eggs on this ship, all right? And they're like glass on the front, some type of plexiglass of some type, and the back of them is metal, and there's like these nanotubes going into the organic wall of the ship. But inside of the tube is the mist, name one, a very thick mist, much thicker than on the rest of the ship. And in there are these lights. And some of them are blue, but some of them were golden. One of them looked golden, like Saturn moving around it, you know? Yeah, and I start noticing, like, because the hypnotist asked me, what are the beings doing? They're always asking me, she's always asking me if I'm being attacked or anything, and it's never the case.
Yeah. I
said, well, actually, I'm observing this egg. So what are they doing? I said, most of them, 2 of them are at stations, but the others are observing this egg as well.
Yeah.
Okay? But I'm thinking in my mind, this egg must be a power source of some type. It sounds like that. It looks like that. The way it's in the wall, it must be some type of a power source.
Yeah.
But then at one point, I'm getting so sick on this ship, I'm about to pass out. The temporal aphasia, about to take me on out. Start puking profusely or something, you know?
Yeah.
And just at that point, 2 of these lights, one blue, one gold, come out of this tube. And one of them attaches to about right here, and the other one to my lower ribs. Yeah. And I immediately start saying, oh, it's helping. They're adjusting my time field. Yeah. You know, and it wasn't until I had my second experience.
You're giving me goosebumps again.
I'm on a different ship that James Gillian and others would call a pure consciousness ship. Yeah. Which I agree with. That's what it would be. All right. And I'm on there, and the bridge itself, all right, is like 24 micro wormholes. Is what our scientists would call it. Yeah. And they're little wormholes that are opening and closing in about, I'd say, maybe 2-second intervals. All right. And they're all over this room. At one point, I see one of these crew members jumps into my field of awareness. Yeah. And it's almost not quite an orb, but definitely a ball. Okay. And it starts more like a plasma ball. And it starts unfolding. And the way it unfolded kind of looks like the state flower here, the sunflower. The way it's unfolding kind of, all right? Yeah. Then it jumps into one of these wormholes and it comes out of another within a millisecond. And they start communicating to me outside of the ship. We're like fish out of water in your dimension, in your density. It's very painful. Some of them have implied to me that they feel like they're on fire. Okay. And I didn't understand that. Our science didn't even work like that. How is a light being on fire? Yeah. You know what I mean? But again, that's the type of pain they're trying to describe.
Yeah.
So then correlating this all together, I didn't realize these wisps I've been seeing while I'm practicing the gate of power and other times out in nature were actually command officers from these ships, the hierarchy. And it got so crazy, I'm thinking, well, my goodness, am I watching command officers playing with fairies? Is that what I'm seeing? And that's about exactly what I was seeing. Yeah. Everybody needs a shore leave. Everybody needs some time off. Just because you're non-corporeal.
Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be other people watching this or listening to it that, you know, that have seen or experienced these wisps as well. And when you compare them to kind of like a fairy type energy, the fairies that I've seen are kind of like a straight kind of orb and small. Whereas like with the wisp, there's kind of this ethereal energy that kind of wisp about with them. And that's probably why the name wisp suits them really well. The other thing with, when you're talking about being out, you know, going out and meditating and working with that, I keep seeing, and I think we've talked about this too, like a cave or something where like there's a different dimensional aspect where they come through, or somewhere where there's a craft under a mountain. I keep seeing something like that connected with it.
Okay, you're going to go there. Well, you're a trip. You know, you never cease to blow me away. Our conversation, especially, I was trying to isolate just the link that you sent before, and I couldn't because all the conversation we had on there was blowing me away reading it again. Okay, something about that, all right? And I mentioned in our little conversation earlier, one thing of the regressions I've had done, hypnotic regressions I've had done, one of them was specifically to see if I had been exposed to virtual reality scenario technology, holographic projections that give you screen memories in case I've been abducted. What if I was like Benny Hill, they really did steal my sperm, or anal probes, I just can't remember it. I mean, I didn't think that happened to me, but I had to be sure, all right? Yeah. And I know that there's definitely a virtual reality component to contact experiences. Yeah. The only person I heard really talk about that was Dr. Carla Turner. She started talking about that before her death. Okay. Right? So, So anyway, I want to know if I've been exposed to that, just to get out of the way. So I underwent a regression for that. All right. Now, on this same ship that I just described, all right, with the portals on it and the bridge, on this one, when I first get aboard this ship, all right, extreme temporal aphasia, really bad. But at this point, this helmet comes down from the ceiling and it goes over my head, and it's too big for my head, all right? And they're calling it telepathically a synaptic helmet. Yeah. All right? And it looks like it's clear, but it's got like these metal things inside of it. It goes over it, and it's on for a minute, then it takes off, and other rooms move around you on this ship. Yeah. You don't have to go to them. They move. It's in motion. Yeah. Another reason it gets so sick in there.
I can see it as you're saying it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a trip. You know, you have to go to the bathroom. The bathroom comes to you. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you know.
And you can see how that throws you out physically, because it's conscious thought that is, you know, the thing that changes it. So, you know, you really got to be a master and in control of your thoughts.
You know, you feel like it's bringing you down. G-force is bringing you down also. But on this ship in particular, okay, in the other room I went to, the next room, before I went to the bridge I just described, it's so interesting to hear you say that, because this room looked a lot like a cave to me. Yeah. Right? And when I say that, it had these things that were similar to stalagmites coming off the ceiling. Yeah. Right? But instead of stalagmites, the front part was kind of like that, but on the end of them were these cones, these moving cones that looked like a honeycomb, a bee honeycomb, but they're moving. With the energy now, I've turned angelic golden liquid energy. Yeah. Because it's thicker. It's almost like like a syrup or molasses thick. Yeah, yeah. Golden thick. Anyway, these things are moving on the end of these stalagmites, all right, in this cave-like thing. And then the next thing I see, and the only way I can describe this, is in the newer Star Treks by J.J. Abrams, when they beam somebody down, it looks completely different. They have these bands of light that go across them. Oh, yeah. Okay? I see that, and then outside of that, of all things, the only way to describe it is a being looking humanoid that looks nearly identical to the ones that are portrayed on the movie Cocoon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Remembers what those beings look like when they drop their skin?
Yeah.
Really? Except for their eyes are a little more human.
Yeah, and they were glowing, kind of like whitey gold sort of color.
Yeah. Yes, and they're telling me that just to go into the portals, it makes their form easier here.
There is some kind of connection with them and that honey-like substance too. Whether it's, feeding them nutrients or something, there's some type of connection. The other thing I get with that too is there's some kind of hum or like vibrational frequency running in the background with that cave. So it's like if you were really, walking, trying to find this place, if you followed that hum or that tune, that would be like a pull to get there. And I feel like when it's active and when there's craft coming in, it's like all of a sudden the level sort of goes up a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The frequency, the hum type of buzz you hear a lot. Yeah. It was, and that, to be honest, during that experience at first before the missing time, we knew they were trying to contact us.
Yeah.
We went out to the spot. As we're going out there, I see a ship following us out there. And we get out there, we park, we try to start meditate. It's gone. I'm sitting there like, you kidding me? So many. You know what I mean? To do all that, these fireflies, and I'll always say this, there is a definite connection between fireflies and light beings. Yeah. They're very aware. No one really knows the true origin of fireflies. Oh, it's a sexual mating when they glow like that. I think that's partially nonsense. Yeah. I can't that kind of light. Most of us can't. I've tried. Can't do it. Yeah. That type of luminescence.
and looking into creatures that are under the ocean and that too, that are, deep sea creatures, and they have that same sort of luminescence glow. And it's similar to, in Avatar, and you've got that conscious interaction with them too.
Yeah, kind of where they hook their trees into the roots.
Yeah. We do have worlds like that existing on Earth.
Yeah. I understand that at first, but I see the fireflies, and then the ship comes later, but it came by sound first. Okay. We recognized it by sound. Yeah. And didn't see it anymore. You know what I mean? And then that's when the consciousness kind of materialized around us and then gone. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That type of deal. Hard to explain, but nonetheless very real. Yeah. But when you go it physically, it's like I see why they take people in the dream body, in the astral body. It's much easier. Trust me. Yeah.
Hey, with that whole experience you just described, one thing that I can see is this, I don't know, he's like a glowing green light being standing up on a hill or something, looking down on this whole experience of you interacting with this craft and everything and the fireflies. Does that make sense to you at all?
There are hills around that area, actually.
Yeah, I just see this green light being.
There are little hills around there, actually. Yeah. I never did understand because that was definitely a contact spot.
Yeah, I feel like it was almost like a bit of a test for you or something.
Probably, because I'll tell you, just not to puke was a free test. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just to hold your cookies was an extreme test.
And I've got to remember to ask the questions too, because it's easy to get carried away chatting with you because I love talking with you. Someone was asking, what is one of the most memorable encounters or dreams that have really stood out to you?
It would probably be when I was a kid. It was one that I knew was kind of physical, but by the same token, as a child, I had a lot of dream interaction and visions and things like that was implying definite contact, but it wasn't corporeal enough for me. I couldn't prove that. Yeah. This particular experience was in the 6th grade. All right. And one night I wake up, I can't hardly sleep at night, because weird things happen. But
I get that.
You know exactly what I mean. Yeah, things you can't explain to anyone else. Why do you have those circles under your eyes? Well, I wasn't sleeping. You can't tell anyone why.
Yeah. There was ETs in my room last night.
Yeah, exactly. I wake up and I'm not in my house. I'm aboard a ship. All right. Yeah. And this is a ship that I'm standing on this metal plate, all right, in front of a screen, a big screen, all right, and floating a little bit to the side, probably about 15 feet to the side, is a being that one of the first ones to really step forward to me that I could visually see by the name of Xandar. And Xandar is an insectoid, all right? And when I say that he's insectoid, he didn't look like a praying mantis. He wasn't like that. And it wasn't that type of a deal. He looked much more like a cross between a grasshopper and a locust.
Yeah.
Which real locusts aren't cicadas. They look like grasshoppers. But he looked like a cross between those with human proportioned limbs, just a little on the smaller side.
Yeah.
Okay, floating above these plates. And he's just giving me telepathic transfer of just a ton of information.
Yeah.
Some that took me years to interpret. But when I look outside of this, when I look up the screen, I see two other ships. They're huge, okay? And they're floating, we're all floating over what could be like, something like the Rocky Mountains or the Swiss Alps or something.
Yeah.
And I see underneath these craft, I can see they're sucking up what looks like fog or something like this. Okay? And Xandar begins telling me it's the smog, the acid rain. They're not smog. He called it acid rain.
Yeah.
He said acid rain is very bad for your planet.
Yeah.
And we're trying to reverse some of it, but the damage that you all are doing to the planet is going beyond our technology.
Yeah.
Now, okay, in the 6th grade, excuse my language, what the hell is acid rain? I never even heard of that, okay? So, there's always the deal where you're dealing with beings that are not normal.
Yeah.
You're in an environment not normal. The odd for deception is high, and I spent a lot of time trying to see if I was being deceptive, you know what I mean? But acid rain, I didn't know what it was, all right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the experience went. Now, a few days later, I'm sitting in class, and our teacher used to have us read something called the Scholastic News. Very good on current events.
Yeah.
And the main article, she chooses me to read it, upgrade. And it was over the Statue of Liberty. It was closed down because they were repainting it because of the acid rain damage to it.
Are you kidding?
Oxidation.
Wow.
And I had to read that when it came across. And then the acid rain.
Wow.
I said, but I see her just tripping. They'll think, oh my God. That's what he told me.
So that was your confirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when I knew something was happening.
Yeah.
But I also went on this binge saying, I want physical contact. No more dream vision stuff.
Yeah.
I want physical contact. I tried to be like the ET guy. I tried to make a shortwave radio.
Yeah.
I tried to phone home. I tried all of it. It didn't work. So I got older.
Which is incredibly brave, for a young child to, say, hey, I want physical, full-blown contact. That's incredibly brave at such a young age. Because a lot of the time at that age, you tell your parents about it or things like that, and it's like, no, it's just a dream. Like, they don't understand how real this can actually be. But you're quite lucky. Like, you saw craft when you were younger, and you had some of your family see craft with you. So
my mom, actually.
Yeah.
That brings something interesting up because I have very vivid, not just past life memories, but I have a really good memory. After taking the brain injuries, they said that might be taken from me, so I'm blessed to still have them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even for much younger age, I couldn't remember the first ship I saw with my mother.
Yeah.
And that brought something up. Later, as I'm an adult, I've had all these adult experiences, real ones. And one day I'm reading a magazine, and my mom walks by and says, actually, it's an old Omni magazine. I was like 32. And she walks by and she says, oh, that looks like the ship we saw.
That's incredible, isn't it?
I said, what? And the time she talked about, I could tell she was going to take me to get a Stretch Armstrong. It was a toy.
Yeah.
And anybody knows what that was. I was a crap toy. Like, the first time you stretched it. Anyway, toxic goo came out of it.
Oh,
anyway.
Yeah. They had lead or something in it, didn't they?
We see this ship, I just can't remember it,
Yeah.
And I actually, my last regression was because I wanted to know why. I had another seer telling me I'd received something from a friend on board that ship.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that either.
And what was that you just held up? Because it's a little bit blurry, the Skype connection. Do you want to just describe what that is?
It looks like a river stone.
Yeah.
Right? And I met a gentleman not long after I saw this ship, probably about 6 months later, if not less than that. I was with my mother in an antique store being bored, and this gentleman approached me from over the counter. I was looking at these rocks, and I wanted one of these rocks because it looked like one from this TV show I was watching at the time called Under the Mountain that was out of New Zealand by a gentleman named Maurice Gee.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah. So I wanted that rock. This gentleman approached me, and I thought he worked there, but I see now he didn't.
Yeah.
He started talking to me in a way only a scientist would, asking me questions, things that you wouldn't ask a kid unless you knew something about them.
Yeah.
But I see how they were implementing thoughts into my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I called him a charter for a long time, a charter. And I think maybe now, after the regression, it might be a little more appropriate to call them historians.
Oh, okay. You just had like orbs fly around you then. There's like silver specks come across like on my screen. So I'm not sure if that's picked up on the video. We've had a few of them flying around in the room, like as we've been chatting too. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think they like the name historians. Yeah,
well, I guess I can just say it then. If anyone I can tell it to, it's you. We've gone so far, but well, I'm definitely not perfect. I screw up all the time. I piss people off all the time. But one problem I had was all the beings looking like, as Peter likes to laugh about, Fabio and Christy Brinkley. I always had a problem with that. I'm not trying to be racial, but in my culture, it's like we don't talk about it as much. Yeah. And none of the beings look black, and that is very, not just discomforting, but it kind of makes you not even want to say nothing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you think, like, are there anybody seeing where the black extraterrestrial? Yeah. So that's there that so I've always kind of been against the Nordic thing to a degree. All right. But that's why I think it's so important that you do, speak about your experiences where you have seen, black beings, and those ones that you put up with the giant brains, they're really interesting looking too. Did you want to talk about them a little bit? Mana? Sure. What I was going to say about the Nordic things is that I had to deal with the fact in my last regression on that ship I saw with my mother, why I couldn't remember it. It's because they bilocated me. But on board that ship were Caucasian gentlemen that looked a lot like, they were Caucasian, but they had these mullets, these kind of great mullets, and they looked a lot like clones. Yeah. And one of them's name was Alex, and he telepathically A-L with the apostrophe, and that was important. A capital A-L was some of them are weird on capital. They are. That's what I've noticed too, because whenever I'm doing the aura drawings and I ask the being what their name is, some of them are, their names either have to be in syllables to hold like separate vibrations. Some will have to have capitals, like they're very specific because it's all about vibration. Yeah. And I'm not very much as much of a tonal guy. So you kind of got to get it through different ways to me, I think. You know? But I was unprepared for that. The fact that I'd seen Nordic beings too, because I couldn't fully remember it. Yeah. I couldn't remember seeing that ship, and because I couldn't remember seeing that ship, but I could remember going to get a Stretch Armstrong. Yeah. And my mom going, Mr. Star Trek guy, and you can't remember seeing a real UFO. Yeah. And I was like, one of those deals. Yeah. But anyway, that's just something I think is worthy of saying. You know what I mean? It changed my look on things, definitely, realizing that, the cosmos definitely runs the gamut, and as all our experiences. Okay, sorry, you asked a question is about Monica with the brain on the outside. Right? Oh, yeah. I should say, too, that I have seen, beings that have darker skin as well. Like, there's a whole variety out there. It isn't just, like, the typical, Billy Meyer Nordic style. We do have, like, the whole gamut. The same as I showed you this, like, before we came on. This is, like, a quick little thing I did a few weeks ago, and it was, like, a sketch of all different beings I've interacted with. This is just, like, to show you kind of the variance in, different types of beings. You've got blue guys, you've got cat beings, you've got dudes that look like Merlin, although they're from, like, star places. You've got, like, blue humanoids as well. This one in the middle, see this one in the pink? I couldn't get her quite like what she looked like. She had kind of like glowing light around her. She was more like what I'd call like more like mocha, like a beautiful caramel colored skin. And she was more Lemurian, but she had like interactions with living light stuff going on around her. Sort of similar to like the wisp energy. Do you think she was in Earth?
when I sort of looked into it, I got like Lemuria stuff, but I would say, you know, they had a lot of connections with inner Earth as well. But I also saw there was like ET comings and goings with her. She was aware of like other stuff going on too. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to show people that there is like a whole gamut, that we're not just all like Nordic.
Yeah, and that's cool too. You know what I mean? But I can accept that either. I'm seeing all these different beings, you know, and then on top of that.
And the insectoids, I mean, they've been a big surprise, haven't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And, you know, some of the beings, okay, this is another thing. You know, I couldn't accept that most of them are non-physical.
Yeah.
They're not, or especially when you're on a ship that is a physical construction.
Yeah.
And you have crew members that don't look like Kirk and Sulu. They're in there like that. You know what I mean? It's just, a lot of them are invisible, you know, and like, you know, example, like what the lady was telling me yesterday, Robin, about the symbols she's seeing in this room. She's on the ship, she's in a room, and she's seeing these holographic symbols and numbers.
Yeah.
Like things, all right? And she kept saying, you know, it seemed like the inside of a cave in there.
Yeah.
Another hint, that's an organic being, an organic ship. But she says, I kept wondering, what must the control room must be like? I said, I think you were on it.
Yeah.
You know, when you start looking at what would a control room be like for non-corporeal beings that are in symbiotic relationship with the ship, they're using self-activating symbols and a self-activating language to control things.
Yeah.
It's not the way we work here, so it's a different frame of reference. And you feel, I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, when you were talking about it, I was seeing, like you were saying, sort of like numbers and symbols and things. And then I saw activations happening with what we would sort of call like a light language. Doesn't mean it had to be spoken out loud, but there was some kind of like vibrational coding that comes in that switches stuff on and things start to light up. That's just what I was seeing when we're talking. Sorry to cut you off from your what we were talking about, like the big brain beings as well. Did you want to go into that a little bit?
Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's that being is mine. In fact, I'll show a picture of it real quick.
Oh yeah, you've got a good picture of that one.
Here you go. I hope you can see it.
Also, you're going to have the pictures in your new book that you're bringing out. Have you got a title for your book yet?
Yeah, a frame of reference.
That's a good name for it.
This is Mana here, all right? About around 9 feet tall, I'd say. The brain, they have a distinct look.
That's nice and clear.
Thank you. Does as my pleasure, as having a androgynous amphibious.
And that was Christine Dennett's artwork as well, isn't it? Cassara?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I should have said that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to her because she's an amazing artist. If anyone wants to get pictures done by her, her name's Cassara. You can find her online, also under Christine Dennett.
Yeah, she's the best. She's done all the work for my book so far and still has to do a couple more still. That being, I've seen on 2 different ships, all right? And from the multiverse, okay? At the time I was younger and she communicated that she was from beyond E-space, beyond the exo-space-time continuum. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
I had to go watching Doctor Who and things like that to even try to figure that out.
Yeah.
You know, now we call that the multiverse.
Yeah.
And from an aquatic planet in the multiverse, and to think of that is like, you don't think of there being a water planet out in the multiverse, but she's communicating things like, if you can understand Dr. Akbar from Star Wars, you'll understand my species. And Dr. Akbar, I'm not as much of that as it was Star Trek, but that's the being that kind of looks like a toad.
Oh, yeah.
It's a commander. Yeah, so that's what it was. I had to talk to some of my ex-employees that were like members of the Star Wars Society. They sent me to the website, a whole thing about these beings that are part amphibious, some of them part reptilian.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Most of them are amphibian or fish-like.
Yeah.
You know, so that was just something different. I just couldn't remember. And trying to find that being illustrated anywhere almost drove me crazy.
Yeah.
It made me to things like Mars Attacks. Their brains are on the outside.
Yeah.
But in reality, the outside of her cranium, the craniums looks like a cross between like an anteater.
Yeah.
Armadillo.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like armadillo.
Is that sort of like a harder type shell, do you mean?
Yeah, kind of like that, but it looks like has the look of almost having a brain on the outside, cranium. So that's it with very large black eyes too.
Yeah,
so
she's definitely like a softer energy compared to like those Mars Attacks characters.
Oh, definitely, yeah. On another ship, some of the others that were similar to her on this Alliance ship, but they were smaller. They were smaller. I'd say probably maybe 5 feet tall. You know what I mean? Not 9 feet tall.
Oh, cool. I was just going to say, it might be time to kick your light on.
Did it mess up the picture? Could you still see it?
Yeah, it came in really clear when you got it up close, and you could sort of see like the detail a bit more. One of the other questions someone wanted to ask you is, do you feel like they were going to have any more sightings in the next year or two, like the Phoenix Lights?
Yes. I'm very interested in the Phoenix Lights. Always have been. And there's a gentleman. His name is excuse me, Daryl Anka. He channels the Bashar.
Bashar, yeah.
I'm kind of not really into channelings because they don't really know who these beings are.
Yeah.
But this one is very interesting. Several things that Bashar has said really resonate.
That's
one
the
of them
same with me.
Yeah. When he talks about the Thuk, the being that when you turn around, you can't remember them anymore when you're not face to face with them.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that one.
Other beings have adapted that ability.
Yeah.
He talks about that. But, he talked about the Phoenix Lights and how that was the first wave of like hybrids that are going to announce themselves because they're our descendants.
Yeah.
And when he says that, I'm getting the impression of the hybrid project that's been going on. The part of this has been going on a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
And I think he calls them the Sasani, correct?
I haven't seen that actual channeling episode that he's done with that. So this is the first time I've heard that one about him.
It's on my YouTube channel.
I should check that out. And we'll have to should put a link into your YouTube channel as well. Okay, and people can find you on Facebook too.
Yeah.
And speaking about like the the Phoenix Lights things takes me back to you and I and the past life stuff, and when we were both first incarnating here. Did you want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. I think it's very valid. First of all, I have a memory of coming here from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like Orion or Sirius or Pleiades or Lyra. It's much further out.
Yeah.
Just like the beings I've dealt with that start telling me, beyond the exospace-time continuum. Way out, 900 billion light years out.
Yeah.
Coming from a planet that I would call the spheres of light and life because they're more energetic forms than they are physical.
Yeah.
So that we're coming from there, and I know it was an assignment, all right? As we get here, we become more physical as we get to this solar system. That's what I can say. Yeah. I know what we look like when we got here.
Yeah. Coming into physical density.
What's that?
I just see it as sort of like coming into physical density. It's like, it's almost like looking at it. You know how they say when people, ascend, that their light body sort of, it's like doing that bit in reverse.
Yeah. And, and then there were the hominids here that had already been seated here.
Yeah.
And we came here as a genetic, biological upliftment. That's what we were supposed to be doing, But then we get here, there are certain problems. I'm seeing there are horrible creatures on the earth as far as beasts.
Yeah.
And we had to go underground at first. I know that. And then we had to stay in the ships for a while and use them as almost a city until the city we made was erected. Okay. And this would have been on the continent of Mu.
Yeah.
By the time we got done, you've got a lot of things like Tesla towers and free energy devices all over the place in that continent, including the technology. And we had to make the pyramids and certain monolithic structures to protect the technology because it had a habit of creating energy into matter, matter into energy.
Yeah.
Like beam me up. The technology could do that.
Yeah.
All right. Some of the technology, like the one I worked with, one of the staffs would stay in the pyramid, like a great pyramid capstone.
Yeah.
Because it also was a weather control modification device as well. Okay. So that, and in like Egypt, when we went there, that was used in that pyramid stone to actually bring up their artesian well from the Nile and then processed through the pyramid and sent out. because there was a problem with the Nile only inundating once a year.
Yeah.
That's I remember anyway. So anyway, going back to moon. All right. Now, what you and I definitely started resonating with, where you have a knowledge of the two cataclysms.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not the way, definitely not biblically exactly, but it's much more intrinsic than that.
Yeah.
All right. What I remember is the first thing was we had the devices I've just described.
Yeah.
We've got hybrids. We're here for a hybrid project.
Yeah.
With these apes that I would call Australopithecus. When I look at the fossil record, the really big ones, those cats were huge.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be doing a genetic breeding with them, and it's basically eugenics.
Yeah.
Right? And the first generation of hybrids maybe had to be destroyed. I don't know, but it didn't go good.
Yeah.
And it's like the third generation, they learned how to gain initiation into the temples because they had what? They had the physical attributes of their mothers, which were the sons of men, as they were called.
Yeah.
These Australopithecus, and the gifts of the spiritual gifts of their fathers, we were called the sons of God. We weren't Anunnaki. Those were reptiles. We'll go to that later.
Yeah.
we weren't Anunnaki, you know, and you can verify this more than I, you know, but by the same token, how can I say it? These devices were fueled basically by Kundalini energy.
Yeah.
Okay. Prana energy itself.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of the ships that people are noticing now.
Yeah.
Like Taken, they show that they're using actually wait a minute, they weren't just the pilots, they were the power source.
Yeah.
Yes. Kundalini. Okay. So that was going on. And then once they gained initiation to the temple, these hybrids, like who we would call Set.
Yeah.
It's not what he pretends to be in those things. He was a hybrid. Set, maybe Akhenaten too, who came along much later, a later hybrid, right? Yeah. But they gained initiation to these temples, and they got control of the instruments, and their selfish carnage way came out, and that disrupted the instruments.
Yeah.
And it created a cataclysm. And what I see is, for anyone to kind of put it together with the movie, the never-ending story.
Oh,
the never-ending story. Yeah, the major bad guy in the major never-ending story wasn't the rock guy. It wasn't the little floating dog, the lucky dragon. It wasn't that. It was the nothing.
Yep.
What was the nothing doing? It was dissolving Fantasia into nothing.
Yeah.
But basically, you've got a force that is dematerializing physical objects into energy.
Yeah.
And it's going out of control because of the nature they had. They put in those energies. It disrupted everything.
Yeah.
So it started cataclysm. I see some parts of the continent getting broken up as like going up, hitting the firmament and falling back down as sand. Where we've got some deserts that don't seem to really make sense on this planet.
Yeah.
Okay. And then others that are they're dematerializing things, and things are breaking up. And the result of that is you have Atlantis, Lemuria, and several other places on the little islands there.
Yeah.
Almost like a Micronesia type of a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was a lot of wars going on there. That's the first cataclysm I see with the instruments. The second one would be Lemuria, which I think was basically sons of God.
Yeah.
And then Atlantis, which I think were basically Anunnaki or somewhere similar. Okay. Yeah. I put up a post not a while ago that was, somebody was very close, but about a tractor beer. There were two moons. When I was a kid, I got in trouble for asking where the other moon was.
Okay.
Always there used to be two moons, you know, there used to be, you know, but anyway, one of these moons was brought in with a tractor beam. It wasn't spaceships that brought it in, but it was a ground-based tractor beam. You gotta remember, we're dealing with a type 1 civilization.
Yeah.
It was not the ancient things we want to save. You know what I mean? But they brought in this moon, and they hit it with some type of a pulsar or something, and it crushed this moon, and it was supposed to rain down on Lemuria and destroy that people.
Yeah.
But what it did was those heated fragments destroyed the firmament of this planet. When it destroyed the firmament, it came down as an onslaught of rain and pouring rain and flood.
Yeah.
Basically, it's called the Great Flood. And at that point, that destroyed that area, Atlantis, Lemuria, all of them. But you have sons of God and Anunnaki, whatever, that use those devices to go other places. We call Venom and Craft or whatever. Wherever the sons of God went, you have these pyramid structures to protect the technology. So they weren't just, for astronomical, they're that too.
Yeah.
Due to that fact, though, but they could protect the instruments, that was a major deal.
Yeah.
For all those reasons, they were that too. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I know some of them still functioning under the ground.
And I've seen and remember from some of those times, like in the top of the pyramid too, I see like almost like a glass chamber or some kind of like crystalline chamber in which you kind of like plug yourself in, almost like Matrix style, when they plug into those chairs and they're connected on a consciousness kind of rig that way. I see that as sort of like a way of communicating back to home or receiving information. I see some kind of exchange happening there.
You're good. There was a chamber there, and traditionally in Egypt, a pharaoh would go up there, get in that chamber. The chamber would dislodge from the capstone.
Yeah.
It's a lot like on my YouTube channel, I've got a picture of a pyramid. It's another pyramid appears to be floating around it in Japan. People say, it must be fake. Don't be so sure of that. Same thing. That chamber, though, the pharaoh was in, it was like an orgone box. Orgone charging box.
Yeah.
And he would go back in after like several days, maybe 48 hours he's spent in there. He'd come out renewed with life energy.
Yeah.
Renewed physically. Yeah. So there's no way you can know that outside of that. That's absolutely correct. So I've never yet heard anyone except for Dr. Mohammed talk about that.
And that's what I love about you and I chatting is we're honest and say what we see. And it always springboards us to like this next step or this next phase. And one of my favorite crystals, is an apophyllite tip because it reminds me of that time and those chambers. If you look at the apophyllite tip, it looks like a pyramid. You've got kind of like a cloudier quartz down the bottom. You get up the top, it's crystalline and it's clear, and it represents communication from the physical into like the spiritual paradigms. And that's sort of what I get from the pyramid too, is that same sort of energy. It's like that's a physical representation of it.
Real quick, I think it's worthy mentioning this too. One of my first memories was standing, especially when I tried to start accessing the genetic memory.
Yeah.
See, I'm standing with another brother taller than me. He must be pushing 9 feet at least. And he's 8 feet, I don't know. He's got on the headdress and stuff.
Yeah.
And it looked a bit ridiculous because it's obvious the goal was really getting to us.
Yeah.
But he's telling me, he's just shaking his head, but he's telepathically telling me, we're going to pay for this. Our ancestors are going to pay for this. We're going to have to reincarnate as our ancestors to pay for this. And I look away from him. I look and I see over this, it's like these steps almost, this plateau, this instruction. There are these things over there, Australopithecus, okay? Yeah. They're enchained and they're doing cement work, basically what we call it, very primitive cement work. Mm. And he's saying, we have anti-gravity technology. They shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, this what doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. But I was thinking to myself, what? This can't be real. It can't be real. And then finally it goes away. You snap out of it. The memories don't last very long.
Yeah.
And then the next was where you and I come knowing each other. Is I'm at a table.
That's how I always see you. Yeah.
Yeah, a big table. And we've got guards there. Okay, they're guards. And on the other side of this table, and it's an odd-shaped table. I see why now they had to be kept away. They're the Australopithecus creatures over there dining with us.
Yeah.
And the fact that they are eating meat, name one, was the thing that blew us away.
Which is probably why I'm a vegan now.
Yeah, and then name two, they don't even absorb the energy from the food they're eating.
Yeah.
And all of us are just over there, just tripped out. And there again, I look over, and there's a brother over there shaking his head again. We're supposed to reproduce with them? And then I was always against it. And then I look over, and there's some ladies standing on the other side of me. And one or two over, they're shaking their head, and it was you saying the same basic thing.
Yeah.
You had knowledge of that event, of that hall.
Yeah.
I see why now. It was just horrible. And I kept knowing the whole thing was going to go wrong in the first place.
Yeah.
And you had humans here, like Nubians and things, they're already treating us as gods, worshiping us as gods, when we were not.
Yeah.
We had been non-physical. And I'm sorry, when I used to see back in the 80s, Mr. T, remember Mr. T?
Yeah.
Christopher Lane from Rocky 3?
Yeah.
He used to walk around with all the gold on
Yeah.
all the time. I'm pretty full.
And that's the line I just thought too, yeah.
Yeah, and the way we kind of were looking with the gold and the ornaments, the elongated craniums and stuff we were wearing, it was a little ridiculous. I'm sorry, but it was. It's the same thing that gets a lot of cultures right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I see that the need to be worshipped and the need to ego.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. That's I think that's worthy.
No, it's good to go into.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, what's that?
It's just good to go into, just to sort of lay it out because, it might be stuff that people have never heard before. And it might trigger some stuff too. Because I find when you start to talk about, your own experiences and different things, it does bring up other people's memories or experiences. And what I keep seeing, what they're showing me now is just like the whole multidimensional reality of that and how some of that's still kind of playing out. All right, we should ask you, I got to ask you the rest of the questions too. So with the Phoenix Lights thing, did we go into that? We did, didn't we? A little?
Yeah. So the answer, I think we'll see more because I think that's a major part of First Contact.
I think so too.
Divine, I even dare you say divine intervention from higher, just using those things because humanity needs divine intervention bad right now.
Yeah.
Bad.
And even if you look at the stats, Mexican TV that Pete was on the other week was saying that since 2012, the sightings have gone up phenomenally. And even like if you look at from mid last year for us, from our winter time, which we don't usually go out so much at nighttime, we've had daytime activity like crazy. And it's continuing. Even through summer, we've had daytime stuff. So I'm like, well, they're out in plain sight now. So they're obviously preparing and getting people ready. So one of the other questions was, we had a lady wanting you to go into the Mandela Theory and what you think about it. Do you know about that a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not an expert on it by any stretch, but what I understand of the theory is it's dealing with alternate timelines, even time slips, time jumps. Okay, as far as Mandela, it's a lot of people remember it being announced that he was murdered on one date.
Yeah.
And come a few years later, all of a sudden they're announcing it's another date. Okay. And there's a discrepancy in the dates of when he died.
Yeah.
I mean, a major one. There are a lot of people are saying that there's a time shift there. There's two different times. And that's kind of been correlated down to the book, The Berenstain Bears.
Yeah.
And the Berenstain Bears is like a lot of people, like my friend Floburn, she says that the copy she had as a child was spelled completely different, Berenstain, and the title was different than it is now.
Really?
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people have actually commented on that. We're seeing like two different types of Pepsi cans, just things that appear to be our timeline's been messed with.
That's interesting, isn't it?
And when we're dealing with beings that you and I have dealt with that are higher dimensions, 16th dimension and upwards, even the lower ones can manipulate the space-time continuum based on the curvature of space.
Yeah.
So you start dealing with that, man, it takes it to a whole nother equation.
And it does happen. Pete and I experienced where we time jump back, 3 months prior, woke up in the morning, it's like, it feels like we're 3 months out of the loop. And then we had two separate people contact us that we hadn't even said this to that same day, and we've gone back 3 months. And then for like 3 months, it feels like you're almost making up or reliving like a little bit of a Groundhog Day type feel. So notice if something like that happens and something doesn't feel right. Because it can happen.
Yeah, I've often wondered, are we on a fixed timeline and we're just seeing quantumly other timelines that are fixed also?
Yeah.
Or are we jumping in between them? I mean, I don't know. It's just food for thought, I guess. It
is. And I'm sure more will be revealed, as we have more contact too. A lot more will probably be explained to us. All right, one of the other questions was, have you ever encountered any dragon-like beings?
Myself, no, I have not. But I do find them interesting for two reasons. One is when you look at things like Kukulkan and others that were described as being dragons.
Yeah.
And, that nature. And then you have what people like Credo Mudua say about some of the reptilians, especially the highest ones.
Yeah.
They look very much like a dragon to a certain degree. They have the wings and things like that. And he says that's where some of that comes into our culture as well. So also I think from strictly fossil record of the birds that were called the Teratorans, and also the oh Argenta tavis, I think it's called, another huge bird.
You do have a good memory.
Pterodactyl. I try, but the pronunciation is not that easy. But Argenventus, Vantavis, Rgenvtavis. Another thunderbird, basically.
Okay.
But you've got pterodactyls. Those things look kind of dragon-like, didn't they? The Petrodon and the pterodactyl, they look kind of like that. So that's kind of where I go there. But personally, have I experienced them? I have not. But I think it's pretty interesting. And I remember reading a story probably about 20 years ago about some type of a drilling into the inner earth they were doing, trying to. And they come into some cavern, and when they crash down into there, there's some sort of a dragon in a cabin down there.
Yeah.
It goes deeper into the earth. That was just a story I read like Omni magazine or something like that.
It's interesting because, you know, some of the sightings or some of the craft people call sky dragons. You know, they've seen them in the sky. There's one of our close friends here. She's got Aboriginal heritage, and she'd actually seen a dragon. And it's, from what I've heard, you know, some people say that they can be protecting places, you know, protecting sacred sites, things like that. I'll just jump to the next question because our time's almost up.
Do you think they're holographic? The dragons? Protect stuff like that?
I think they can kind of cloak in and out of this vibrational dimension. I feel like they're still, you know, can come into like the physicality side of things too. So you better watch, like, they, you know, they could burn your ass or something. All right, so someone's talking about telepathic messages in the past, telling them to go outside or to look up. And they've had like significant dreams and things like that of an ET version of themselves. And they just want to know, is this normal to make contact in this way? I would say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that's one thing. If I could have accepted that more, I need not getting sick like that on those ships. Yeah, definitely. And part of it is that, you know, I've been talking a lot about those of us that are dreamers, how they can actually, the dream body, we can have total cognitive awareness in the dream body.
Definitely.
As much as we do in this body now.
Yeah.
And that happens when you go to sleep. You're on a middle ground that who's ever on board of those ships you're seeing in waking consciousness can communicate with you much easier. You're meeting them halfway then.
Yeah.
And that goes in between the physical body and the dream body, which are both ours. It's a matter of us being cognitive in each one. That kind of touch that?
And that's a good way to explain it. So for people that want to check out more of that and find out more how to do it, what would you say? Like, find out more on astral travel and things like that, or find out more on shifting consciousness when you're going into a dreamlike state and kind of reminding yourself that you are aware even in that state?
That's a good question. Information. I don't know. Do you know of any, specific,
For me, like when I've had it happen, I just try and tell myself out loud, this is actually happening. And I try and keep cognitive awareness when I'm going into that split reality or that dreamlike state, so that I'm existing on a dual reality. So I've got both the conscious and the non-conscious going on together. That's I guess, the only advice I can give in that way.
Yeah, no, that the gates of dreaming, which are designed to give you the ability to sustain dream attention.
Yeah.
And dream attention is the total cognitive ability, like I was talking about. And for me, the first gate that I used, someone yesterday told me about a glass of water, but for me, it was looking at my hands.
Yeah.
You gotta put your hands in a dream.
Yeah.
And then shifting your awareness. But if you can just do that, and you have to program yourself in your waking consciousness to remember to do it when you're asleep. And if you remember, look at your hands, you become aware that you're dreaming.
Yeah.
So that's the way. But crossing those gates for me was super hard.
Yeah.
I had to use things, I'm what's called a gatherer, a stalker. I had to act a way that was different in waking consciousness that freed up enough energy for me to be able to perceive lucidly and have dream attention when I was asleep. Otherwise, I was like everybody else. My ass is out. I'm sorry. I was out and I can't think. I don't remember anything when I wake up,
Yeah.
So those gates of dreaming were very hard for me, but doing little things like that and some other ways to expand your consciousness in the waking state.
It's almost programming the subconscious too, that you are going to retain the memory and the experience.
Yeah. And do like some techniques like looking techniques.
Yeah.
And those are easy. Stare at the moon and the moon starts jumping around on you. That's a good looking technique. Or look at yourself in a mirror without blinking and about 10 seconds see what you really look like. Anyway.
That's a good one. All right. Someone else is asking about like the ET's experiences that take place inside the mountain, which I think you sort of covered a little bit on that. So we might jump together. We'll jump to another question because we talked about like, how some of the crafts are like caves and things. So we've also got someone asking about what the numbers 3, 6, and 9 mean. They're asking more what it means to him. So we might have to leave that for something else. Chris Turner, who made the movie Don't Mention the Reptilians, which I think has just been given a new name. And he's also doing the Anunnaki film as well that Pete and I are both in and James is in. And Brendan Murray's in that too. He said he would love to ask you if you encountered the Djinn, shadow creatures. Although it was believed they are an ancient race that inhabited Earth long ago before we arrived, they are sometimes witnessed in abduction scenarios and allegedly to take form of humans and extraterrestrials. Particularly reported are the Greys and reptilians. I wondered if that if the way it is was distinguished between the Djinn and the ET. Like, can you tell the difference between the two? I think he's asking.
Yeah. One thing, Chris Turner did the X-Files, right?
Christopher Turner, he's done... I don't think he's done X-Files. I think this is a different one. Correct me if I'm wrong, but...
I'm trying to remember that guy's name that started the X-Files.
Yeah.
Concerning the Djinn...
We'll have to Google.
As far as on a ship, I've not seen that. But I did have a friend, and she's a well-known seer, a well-known clairvoyant where I stay, and she has people to her home. And when you go in her home, she has like 20 chairs in a circle.
Okay.
I was very much aware of two spirits in her house. One of them was a chief, and the other one was a little guy, like a trickster guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't a trickster, but he looked like that. And almost like a joke, like a Peter Pan type of deal.
Yeah, I've seen sort of similar.
Looking around there, and he took a liking to me, but I could almost perceive him physically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that was a djinn.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad spirit, it wasn't malevolent.
Yeah.
But
they're like trickster-like, aren't they?
Yeah, kind of mischievous, and like, I like to play practical jokes sometimes too, and it's probably like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's bad, so I don't.
I excuse my dyslexia reading that out to saying Djinn when it's Jinn.
That's all right. Hey, that other person concerning the mountains, concerning the mountain, the other person.
Oh yeah.
Mountain. Something interested, and it made me look into this more. In one of my regressions, and actually my first one, it comes out towards the end. I'm standing, and we're coming up on this mountain, and the top of it, it's a range, a mountain range, very high.
Yeah.
On the top are what look like almost garage ports.
Oh, okay.
Next thing, I'm standing outside of this, looking at these crafts in there. Okay, but there again, I don't see any beings, not humans, nobody that I can see corporeally. Anyway, I'm saying like, well, there's no way that Big Brother doesn't know about this. You know what I'm saying? They can't do nothing about it. There's no way they don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And start thinking about people like Shirley MacLaine, fascinating lady.
Yeah, she is.
A ranch outside of is it Guadalajara, wherever it is that there's an explosion of crystals that is outside the Caldera mine.
I'm not sure where it's called.
She has a ranch there with the crystals that are exploded everywhere. But a lot of other stars have seen ships going to the mountain and dematerialize, coming in and out of the mountain. And
that's what takes place at James's. And also in, I think it's Mexico, they monitor crafts coming in and out of the volcanoes when there's volcanic activity either about to happen. They'll witness crafts coming out. And some people say that they're actually kind disarming the volcano and getting it to calm down. Going back to the Jinn question quickly too.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right, because he wanted to know if there's a way to distinguish between more like the ETs, reptilians, and greys, and the Jinn. I guess my thing, what I usually do is ask. So it's like, there is kind of a universal law that, if you ask them 3 times or more, if they're there for your highest good, or, finding out a bit more about why they're there, like asking them a few questions, but repeating it 3 times or more, you kind of find out either in the way that they try and go and sidetrack from the question that they're not there for your highest good. So, that sort of puts that flag up as to what type of creature they are, or jinn. But yeah, also the fruit from the experience with them too. Was it a benevolent experience? Was it that they were trying to, totally flood your ego and, lift you up and make you really good? Or was it that they're giving you tips and things that can help? Which a lot of the benevolent ETs are more like that. It's like, you should try this when you meditate. You should try connecting in this way in, this certain state. Whereas with the other beings, they're really, more sort of flattering to the ego and things. What would you be describing as a way to kind of distinguish between them?
To me, the jinn that I experienced, or whatever this being was, it felt more like a nature spirit, more like a nature spirit in that way, whether mischievous or not, as opposed to the extraterrestrial beings that I felt are always of a different vibration.
Maybe it even could have been like a Pan type creature, because he can be like a bit trickstery, but more elemental.
Yeah, this is a being that she said is one of her guides. Okay. Like I said, he took a liking to me, so he meant me no harm. But he's running around there, kind of like a kid would run around, sit in a different chair over here, get up, sit in this one, sit in that one, like that. You know what I mean? And it was. This they feel more like a nature spirit that I've interacted with more than the extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial has a different vibration. Yeah. And to be honest, I would have the most problem telling the difference between extraterrestrial and interdimensional. Yeah. Sometimes feel a lot the same.
They're a bit closer, aren't they? And I guess like one of the other ways to check in and ask, because sometimes we can get too much up here in the mental, is to check in with your body. So whether you tune into your heart or your gut, go ask that same question. Okay, is this benevolent or is this ET? And let your body actually filter that response and see what kind of a gut feeling or a heart feeling you get around it.
Yeah.
We're pretty much out of time. We've gone a little bit over, but I'd love to have you back on. I always have so much fun with you.
Well, thank you. Am I one of the first male guests?
Yeah, you are. That reminds me, I've got to ask you, what is your take and your what do you feel like with all this female sort of changeover that's happening and the female energy influxing? How do you see things kind of going and changing to do with this, I guess, galactic shift that we're having happen?
You put me on blast right before we get off. Wow. First of all, I hope I didn't traumatize your female audience. My God.
I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure they love you. I think you'll be getting a few more friend requests, Barry.
That sucks. Don't have him back.
You poor thing.
One thing I've noticed concerning what you just said, I wanted more experiencers to come forward, not just of colors, but of all types. And the amount of women that have come forward, and considering I'm a bachelor and suck at relationships, obviously I'm no expert on women, but the amount of women that have come forward, it's been astounding. And it shows a lot about the feminine aspect that's coming into the creator right now. Yeah. Because it's not acknowledged enough here. It's always that God is a male. I thought that way until I started examining that the cosmos is a womb. And the creator is both, 50-50. Yeah. And maybe bipolar too. You know what I mean? That's a joke, but seriously.
That could explain some of the interesting stuff that happens here.
Yeah. But the feminine aspect, it's been strong coming in, and I think it's well timed, because if not, there's never going to be a balance, and we won't proceed forward as humanity. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Oppression of anything doesn't do that. So.
Yeah. And it's bringing a lot to the male side too. It's bringing a lot of balance. It's also the females getting more of that strength and that like reassurance and confidence that some of the males have too. So it's a little bit borrowing from both sides.
Well, I got a question. It's like you. Are all the star seeds that are coming forward just gorgeous? I mean, I'm seeing like hundreds of people are talking about. I'm seeing like all of them are very good looking, different cultures. All the star seed females, very attractive. I'm like, good Lord, man.
And it's actually interesting. A lot of the experiences that I've met too, there's something different about them. They do have, some kind of glow and something non-human about them.
And the amount of genius that's coming forward is
I think you're definitely in that. You're in that category of geniuses, and which is why I wanted to have you on the show, because you articulate it so well, your experiences, and you research into it. After it's happened, you look into it, which is what I like to do too. After something happens, I like to kind of nut it out and find out more about it. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you. Say hello to Peter for me, please.
I will. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless. Bye.